The following is a local resident producers program. The program content is the sole responsibility of the producer and does not necessarily reflect the views or policies of CATV2, Oshkosh Community Access Television, the City of Oshkosh, the Oshkosh Cable Television Advisory Commission, or Time Warner Cable.
Hi everyone, welcome to another edition of Eye on Oshkosh. I'm Cheryl Hens, along with my co-host Tony Palmieri. On this edition, we're very pleased to be joined by two members of the group CUT, which actually is the acronym for Citizens United to Transform the Winnebago County Board. I'm sure that most of you watching this program are aware that there is a movement underway to reduce the size of the county board by half, from 38 down to 19. To my left is Jeremy Monette, correct?
Monette,
Jeremy Monette and Kathy Prop, who has been a guest on our show before. They're both members of CUT and very actively involved in the movement to reduce the size of the county board. So during this hour, we're going to talk about why they feel so strongly about it and what has been happening. And there is a lot happening. So thanks very much to both of you for being here. Let's start by finding out exactly what Citizens United to Transform the Winnebago County Board is.
Sure. Well, first off, we'd like to thank both of you, thank Tony and Cheryl for all your efforts in bringing these issues to the forefront and to the voters and citizens of Winnebago County. And we may not agree with you all the time. In fact, maybe we'll rarely agree with you, but it takes a lot to put on shows like this. We appreciate that. As far as what is the Citizens United to Cut the County Board, it's really at its core, it's just what it says. It's a group of concerned citizens. They came together with a united effort to reduce the overall size. It was something that we talked about with the county board, and I guess the first fact we'll start with is the sheer size of the Winnebago County Board at 38 supervisors. It's one of the largest in the nation. It's quite eye-opening, in my opinion, when you look at other counties in the United States, and you see the average size is, Kathy? 5, I believe, is the average county board size in the United States. We feel, and this is really what all unites us, we feel 38 is just too many people to do the kind of things that we want our county board to do.
Okay. So you started this group. Who was the actual organizer of the group?
Well, it sort of evolved. Like all good things, Rome was not built in a day. That's the famous saying. But in this case, it evolved very deliberately and quite, in my opinion, predictably. As we started getting these very good minds together, a lot of active citizens, in my opinion, some of the most reform-oriented people that really just want better government, more efficient, more accountability. We all started to get together, and actually it was started by Progress Oshkosh, which I'm heavily involved in, and Kathy is not so heavily involved in. But we ended up, as Progress Oshkosh, having the subcommittee that was just titled the Subcommittee to Improve the Winnebago County Board. Mm-hmm. And as we started these meetings as a subcommittee, we invited the foremost experts in the field, which we considered to be the League of Women Voters, which is why Kathy is sitting beside me, and she's very passionate and knowledgeable about the issue, as you're about to find out, as well as just some random citizens who said, you know, this is something I've been interested in for years, and I'm interested in learning more. So we probably had, Kathy can confirm this, maybe a dozen meetings over the first year and a half. And you just asked us before the show when the Senate Bill 4 was passed, that was Greg Underheim's legislation, that finally allowed citizens the right to petition to reduce the overall size of the county board. And we took full advantage of that. We started a petition drive. We quite deliberately went out and started circulating the petitions. And that's how it all started.
Okay.
But, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Well, and of course, that legislation that you had just referred to was signed into law in January of this year, and it does allow, as you said, Jeremy, citizens to petition their government to reduce the size of the county board once during a 10-year period.
What we call
Correct?
a census period, correct, every 10 years.
Okay. And so you did circulate the petitions. You came up with a lot of signatures, more than 5,600. How many did you need?
Just over 6,000 we actually came up with,
You did,
Cheryl.
okay.
And the total we needed was... go ahead.
4,378, I think,
Well, I
which
think
was 25% of the total votes for supervisor.
I wish Kathy would just be specific once in a while. But yes, she's very good with the numbers, and that's about what we needed, and obviously we well exceeded that.
And of course, there was, this petition drive going on, and while you were gathering signatures, the county board did what I have been referring to as an end run around you guys. They went ahead and they very deliberately reduced their own size by 2 members, from 38 down to 36. And that sort of put a short in your plans.
I do want to clarify one thing on that, Cheryl, that is not entirely accurate. Yes, they did vote to reduce by 2. So they passed basically a
resolution.
A resolution to say
Of intent.
we're going to reduce by 2. They never actually did the mechanical work behind the scenes to reduce themselves by 2. Very interesting. So they never actually did reduce themselves by 2.
What he means is they didn't draw the map.
Redraw the map.
They're in the
matrix.
process
And
of doing
they're
that now,
about
though.
to do that.
So, but let's back up, and then
Yeah,
I want Tony to get in here
Okay.
too.
I just, okay, do you want me, can I go now?
Sure, yeah,
Okay,
go ahead.
I just want to back up before the signature drive. My understanding is, anticipating a movement to possibly put a referendum on the ballot, the county board chair, Mr. Albrecht, and the county board created a committee that was supposed to look at things like appropriate size of the board, functions, and what have you. You were put on that committee, is that
Yes,
correct?
I was.
Okay. Wasn't there some informal agreement that as long as that committee was working, and it was meeting, as long as that committee was meeting, there would not be a referendum drive?
No,
what-
there was not an
Then why,
informal
why,
agreement.
why bother with the committee?
When Mr. Albrecht approached me wondering if I'd be willing to serve on the committee, I said yes, I would. I like dialogue. I'd love to be able to help bring the sides together. But I did tell him that there was likely going to be a referendum drive and that I probably couldn't stop it if I wanted to. And I think that's true. People were eager to get going. So there was not an informal agreement. He knew when he appointed me and the others that there could still be a referendum drive.
Well,
I think he
wasn't it-
was hopeful
Yeah.
that we would hold off longer than we did.
Sure.
There was no agreement.
Well, wouldn't a cut agree that the actual number of board supervisors is probably less important than what we determine is needed to do business? In other words, what's so magic about 19?
What's magic about 19 was the state law under which we are doing this. The restrictions in that law made 19 the best number because one needed to keep board sizes identical, board lines identical to what they are now. There are only a certain number of ways that one can reduce the board by any number, keeping ward lines identical. Because in Oshkosh we have large wards. And so 19 was the easiest, the cleanest. Every supervisor would have to run against someone in the first election from 38 to 19. We felt that was fair. We thought it was clean. Is 19 a magic number? No. But neither is any other number.
I agree, Kathy.
You want to speak to why 19?
It's perfectly said. I mean, let's do some logic here. You've got 38 people with equally sized districts, and during the census, people spend a lot of hours drawing districts very carefully so that we have what we call a one person, one vote, one citizen, one vote, equal representation in these districts. So when we're talking about a citizen movement, we're very sensitive to the fact that we want to do this cost effectively and as efficiently as possible. So let's take 38 divided by 2 is 19. let's go even simpler. District 1 plus 2, 3 plus 4, 5 plus 6. You know, you go very logically through. You end up with 4,000 approximately voters per district. You end up with 8,000 voters per district. You end up with equal representation in rural and urban areas. You end up, as simply and cleanly as possible, in my opinion. A first grader could go through and redistrict this plan. It would be very, very simple to do.
But what evidence do we have? This is what I've been waiting for years.
Sure. What
evidence do we have that 19, 10, 11, 25 is better than 38? It sounds like cut for cut's sake.
I'll fall back on my initial statement tonight, Tony, which I think is clearly the answer to your question. We have one of the largest county boards in the country. Why? Why do we have 38? Well, it's as simple. I mean, we can go back and talk about for hours about why we ended up with 38 supervisors, but in a nutshell, we ended up with 38 supervisors because before we had technology, before we had telephones, before we had the internet, people would come in from the townships representing citizens. They would meet in a town hall atmosphere. And we're going back to grassroots government here. And they would represent these citizens and discuss concerns and other things going on in the county. The west side of the county was a lot further away back then than it is now. Jump in your car, jump on 21, we'll be there in a couple minutes. Now let's talk about as it evolved. The more recent, especially as we've studied, and the League has done a lot more studies, the League of Women Voters, than I have on this. But as we study more modern governments, and that would be, let's point to the West Coast. Some of the largest counties in this country, some of the fastest growing counties in this country. Let's think of a couple, Las Vegas, Sacramento area. You look at those county boards and how they operate, 5, 6 people. And we're talking about close to 1 million citizens, not whatever we have in this county, which is 100 and some thousand.
But if you look at those counties, Jeremy, you'll often find that the county supervisors, those 5, work full-time. They make 6-figure salaries. They have full-time staff. We're talking big budget operations.
And a very different model, Tony. Now, we're not talking about cutting to 5 here. We're talking about going from 38 to a very clean, efficient, and effective 19. It will be very cost-effective for the citizen, and in our opinion, you'll end up with a more visible supervisor. You'll end up with someone who has to go door to door. We'll end up bringing competition back. I mean, I'm a huge, obviously, a business owner and somebody who's looked to for leadership on the business side of this community, and I love competition. I love what it brings into everything that it's entered into, whether it's an economic system or a government system. In every case, the competition will make for a better supervisor, a more accountable supervisor. Come budget time, you'll actually know who your supervisor is. You can actually call them up. This is our hope as the CUT committee. You'll be able to call up your supervisor and ask them very pointed questions about what's going on with the budget process.
Why can't you do that now?
Well, you can, but 38 is a lot of people. And as we've studied how many people actually talk during a county board meeting. What do you think that number is, Tony? About 38 people when you start with a meeting. That's
a little bit misleading, though, because they operate on a committee system. I mean, lots goes on.
Yes.
But before we talk about that, I saw online you were part of a Progress Oshkosh committee to strengthen county government, and I saw some minutes of a meeting in which it was stated that the overall goal is not necessarily to reduce the county board size, but perhaps to increase its effectiveness. But now it's looking like the overall goal was to cut the county board size.
No, I don't agree with that. I think the overall goal continues to be a more efficient, this is what I just talked about, the answer to your last question. We're talking about a more efficient and effective county government by having a more visible supervisor. Let's start there. I think this has been an issue, just taking another little step back, that's had very strong county voter and citizen interest for the last 25 years. Time and time again, if we go back and study the history, people have brought this forward, and every single time the Winnebago County Board has seemingly gone out of their way to squash it, to stomp it, to try to, what do you say, sidestep, to try to avoid the issue. We're here to say, well, finally, with the Senate bill, we had a tool as citizens to go out and actually, all we're asking for here, let's clarify this. The CUT committee, all we're doing with this petition is we went out with these signatures and we asked that this question show up on the ballot. the April ballot. That means to a voter and a citizen out there, you're not compelled to say 19 or 38 or whatever number, but you're going to have an opportunity to vote on it, and we love that. That's all we want.
But doesn't it bother you, Jeremy, or Kathy also, that let's assume for the sake of argument the county board reduces to 19 as a result of this legislation allowing you to go with referendum. If after 2010 a group concludes that 19 is not working, that legislation does not allow to get a referendum on the ballot to increase the size of the county board. That legislation only allows for decreasing the size of the board. Isn't that unfair?
I don't see it that way. I think Kathy
But
has
that's
a good
true.
answer.
Well,
to
I
that
think
one.
in 2010, let's say we are able to reduce to 19.
Right.
Let's say that the county board deems that that's not workable. In 2010, the census time, they can increase their own number.
But that is a flaw in the legislation. If the legislation only allows, I mean, Mr. Wingren on the board was giving this grand, eloquent statement about everyone has to be heard. But in fact, the Underheim legislation doesn't allow everyone to be heard, because if you support increasing the size of the county board, you can't do it under that legislation.
I
think
suppose that's true, but to me, it boggles the mind that one would want to increase such a huge county board.
And I'll fall
So
back on
it
our
hasn't bothered
preliminary.
me.
Yeah, I agree, Kathy. I'm totally on the same page with Kathy on this. Let's fall back to our initial statement. 38 is one of the largest county boards in the country. The average number, Tony, not the smallest.
Sure.
The average number is between 5 and 6. It's 5.
Well,
I
let's
believe.
not talk about other states
But
because
I'm
we're an
just-
aberration. Let's talk about
I'm just coming
Winni-
back to that single point,
Wisconsin.
and I think that opens our eyes up.
Wisconsin. The average size right now is 25.
Excellent.
Yeah, that's before these counties that just passed votes to redistrict, to cut their boards.
Right.
And so the average size will become effectively even less than 25. So frankly, I don't even want to talk about county boards that are 5 or 7 in some other state, because that's not our system.
I agree.
And
You know,
we could be
I think
as
we can
large
talk
as
about-
47 here in Winnebago
Yeah,
County,
we could.
couldn't we?
Right.
We could, and we were at one time. So
Really?
the
Right.
county board has cut us a little bit over the years.
When were
Slowly.
we at 47?
1970, I think.
Wow.
And I do want to address one more thing that you said, Tony, and that is about the startings of cut with Progress Oshkosh. Yes, originally it started, and like I said, Rome wasn't built in a day. This is a very deliberate, slow process, and I feel has been a very educated process and one that's involved a lot of research. We're just saying, reducing the size is, in my opinion, a big part, and the cut committees, a big part of that overall reform, demanding a better, more efficient, more effective government. And if I may segue into one other thing, the county board's own studies, and these are what we most heavily studied initially, because we were like, where are we going to start? Let's sit at, we started just like at a table like this with a few people, and it grew into a larger and larger group, and I feel as people learn more about this thing, it's going to grow more and more and more, because it's, everybody we've talked to is like, wow, I wish we would have done this years ago. But let's talk about the county's own studies. The first one was commissioned in 1987, and it was titled an Action Planning and Organizational Study. And our intent as the cut committee is to make these available to citizens through our website, which we'll talk about in a little bit here. But really, I just wanted to read one highlighted excerpt here from this study, and then I have one from a later study. The overall objectives of this study were to determine the optimal organizational structure to carry out county functions, to provide recommendations to minimize duplication of effort, to assist in establishing clear lines of accountability, to maximize efficiency in service delivery, and to provide assistance in planning for the future needs of the county. That's 1987, a very expensive study conducted by a very expensive agency. And that's about I'd say 30-page report. I have the full report available if you're interested. And the other one, which is the one that we've been pointing most to, this was one that it was even more time-consuming and more pages, 1990, the Task Force Study on Efficiency and Effectiveness of Winnebago County Government. This is one that any citizen can go down to the Winnebago County Clerk and purchase a copy of or have photocopied for you. And let's get to the real meat of this. I didn't highlight it. Well, I did highlight one thing, and then I'll talk about the structure. That was under the conclusion section, one line. The Winnebago County Board should consist of a minimum of 15 and a maximum of 30 supervisors. Even with the county board's own action they took to reduce from 38 to 36, we have to step back and say that's not even listening to their own study between 15 and 30. And we don't believe that 19 is at all, we've heard some people say, oh my God, this is a catastrophic, horrible change. Well, guess what? It's going to bring the efficiency and the effectiveness kind of changes that we require.
Well, that study, I've seen that study, the task force from 91. That study had on it people who I think went in already believing in a smaller county board. I mean, I wouldn't call this this is not a scholarly study. I'm not putting it down. I'm not saying it's got bad information. But this was more of an advocacy document, wasn't it?
Well, I don't think so. I think it was a combination of laying out what could be done. I thought it was I still think it's the guide that Winnebago County should use. And there were county supervisors on that committee.
Yeah.
So they weren't necessarily gung-ho advocates of change.
Well, one thing it advocates in there is that we should pay county supervisors $3,000 a year, a flat rate, as opposed to the per diem. Is that would you like to see a 19-member county board that they all get paid? That was $3,000 in 1991, so maybe it'd be $4,000 or $5,000 today. So would you like to see 19 people getting paid $5,000 a year flat?
I don't think I'm the one qualified to make that judgment, Tony, but I do think that if we are successful in our effort to reduce, which is really where our point of focus is, if we're able to reduce to 19, then it's up to our county board to set up legitimate committees with people that understand county government, with the experts in the field, to look at what's worked nationwide and what hasn't. I mean, we're not out here on an island. We have a lot of counties around us, Fond du Lac County, that just cut in half. We've got another, Price County just did a pretty major cut. Yeah. These have been in our own backyards. We've got a lot of data that we'll be able to draw upon as we make these cuts.
Wouldn't it make sense to wait a couple of years and use Fond du Lac as a test case? I mean, let's just see what happens there. After
no, it wouldn't. The momentum was now. The legislation was effective in January 2006, and so we looked at the dates when we could have a referendum. First referendum realistic was this November. We weren't organized, frankly, in time. And then we looked at what's the next referendum. Well, that's April of 2007. There is no November referendum next year. The next possible referendum would be April 2008, but that's the year that supervisors are elected. So it would not go into effect until 2010. By that time, it's census time. So no, it made no sense to wait. It made every sense to us to build on the momentum of the other counties and the fact that the legislation was
So you
here.
collected 6,000 signatures, over 6,000. You brought them to the county clerk, Sue Ertmer, and she would not accept them.
Right.
Is that right?
Right.
What was her rationale for not accepting them?
She claimed that the county had made on advice of Corporation Counsel, that the county had made its decision to reduce by 2, and that therefore they had cut us off in using that legislation. We argued, and this it's going to be up to a court to decide. We argued that the county had only undertaken half the process. They'd gone halfway. They had said yes, they wanted to reduce. They had not drafted the plan. They had not approved the plan. Therefore, our legal advice said our petition is still valid. So that's why we attempted to file the petition. That's why we still feel that.
So who is being sued? Is it Ertmer who's being sued?
I don't think we can comment on details.
We don't really want to go into the details of the lawsuit. It is public record, Tony, and you can go up on the circuit court website and learn everything you want to know about the website as of right now. To be honest, we don't learn new information much before the public does at this point because
all we can say it's in the courts, and we have.
But
our goal is to have the clerk accept the petitions to certify that they are legal, and then of course our goal is to have the court say yes, the petitions got there in time. We will allow our referendum.
I do want to clarify one more thing on the lawsuit, and this is one statement that I will openly make. We're a group of citizens here that took the due course. I know I printed out a copy of the Constitution here and our Amendment 1, where we will Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting free exercise thereof or abridging the freedom of speech of the press. I know, Tony, you're an expert on this. Or the right of the people peaceably to assemble and to petition the government for redress of grievances. It was just very disappointing to go into the office and not even have these petitions, which we all worked so hard and heard so much positive out there. I mean, all of us, as we sat at the table, we gained energy through this process because everybody was like, yes, it's about time. Thank you so much. This is an issue I'm very concerned about, and this is something we want to be able to vote on. And it was a real, it was a real letdown to go in and have the stack of petitions, which, a stack of 6,000 signatures is about that high, and have them slid right back across the table at us, and then told to, hit the road. We're not interested in this. And so, I'm not a fan of the current legal system. I can say that openly. There's a lot of things that we need reform on in the legal system, but I will say this. We have an outstanding attorney. And as a last resort of taking these 6,000 signatures and having to chuck them in the trash or fight for what we thought was right, we fought, and we're going to continue to fight. We've got a lot of resolve, a lot of support, and we're going to be openly soliciting some financial support from the community and the rest of the county to help with this fight. It's kind of tragic in a way that we have to pay not only the county attorney to fight the opposition, which I don't know where they're coming from, versus we have to pay our attorney to fight for us, for citizens' rights. It's very disappointing. And to me, as a young person, as a young leader in the community, it's quite disheartening to have to go through this process, and it takes the wind out of your sails a little bit. But like I said, if we're anything, if the CUT committee is anything, it's stubborn, and it's educated, and people with very tight resolve, we're going to see this through.
Well, it is a shame that you have to expend your own monies to fight your government, basically, to do
exactly
what you
what's
believe
going
is the
on,
right
and we
thing.
feel this is a national story.
But, and it may make national headlines.
Yeah.
But as Tony and I learned from a different show, you might be able to recover your legal costs from the county if you prevail. Of course, if you're soliciting donations, I don't know how that would work. You'd have to, keep track and pay everybody back. Can I ask why the group as a whole didn't file the lawsuit rather than just one member?
That I would defer to the expertise of our attorney.
Okay.
That is what we were advised to do, and that's after studying, I'll just tell you, this is after studying case law and having an understanding of what's happened in the past with suits like this.
Okay. Why do you think, over 6,000 signatures is a lot of signatures. Why do you think so many people are, really either strongly opposed to not cutting the county board size or strongly in favor of cutting it? Are they just the ones who are signing the petitions? Are they just sort of jumping on the bandwagon? Are they fed up with government as a whole? Why do you think the overwhelming response that you got?
The answer is yes.
Yes to all of the above.
Everything you just said, Cheryl. We found, we represent as a CUT committee, and certainly Kathy and I embody sort of the spectrum, if you will, of what's represented in the CUT committee. All walks of life, all different interests. Me personally, I've dealt with the county on many. The issue nearest and dearest to my heart is Winnebago County Airport. I love the airport. I make my living at the airport. I use the airport. And, I like to see a more effective government body to help manage it, see it grow, economic development, all the good things that come from that. That's why I'm personally so passionate about this and seeing a better kind of overlord, overseer, landlord of the airport. Kathy, the League of Women Voters, they're interested in better government and doing what they can to see a more effective and efficient government. And I think that really embodies the average citizen you see on the street. They're like, what are they doing? I don't even know who my county supervisor is. And we heard that a lot. And that's very disappointing to us. We want a very open government. We want a very honest government. We want a very efficient government. I just keep hammering on those things, but that's really what we're looking for here.
Well, they don't know who their county board supervisor is. And maybe that person represents 4,000 people. How will they know who their county board supervisor is if that supervisor has to represent twice as many people?
Well, we think they'll naturally be more visible. And we think each one of them will have more impact. Their one vote will have more impact, twice as much impact. And we think there will be fewer committees because they won't be able to manage all these committees with 19 supervisors. There will be, we hope, 5, 6, 7 major standing committees instead of the 17 that they've got now. These committees will have a larger, broader base, take on more topics. And so the committees will be more visible. They will be accountable for their votes. It'll be more obvious what people that vote yes and vote no. More obvious the people that are there and not there. And in the end, it's up to the quality of people that run for the county board supervisor post. There are always some very good candidates and sometimes maybe some not so very good candidates, but hopefully with 19 seats, the competition will result in a good quality candidate for us.
And I think too, personally, that the size is probably too big. But how would either of you or both of you respond to, we hear about how the Chamber of Commerce is so involved in city politics. We have heard how Progress Oshkosh has sort of spun out of the chamber, and now CUT has sort of spun out of Progress Oshkosh. How would either of you respond to the argument that I know I've heard out there on the street, and Tony, you've maybe heard it too, that this is just another somewhat thinly veiled effort of the chamber to get into the pockets of certain elected officials?
We would happily respond to that.
I
We
want
have
this
had
one too,
no
Kathy.
help from the chamber.
In fact, the opposite.
Yes,
We've
they
had
have
nothing.
resisted
Nothing.
our requests for help.
And I do want to respond to sort of that understanding, which I feel is completely false. I was involved with Progress Oshkosh from day one. I was at the initial meeting. I've been on the steering committee from day one. I'm probably one of the most deeply seated and have spent close to the most amount of time on Progress Oshkosh. So I can certainly say, first off, what we're here tonight for, the CUT committee, is nothing, very little, honestly, to do with Progress Oshkosh. Correct in what Tony stated. It started as a Progress Oshkosh subcommittee. I was the chairperson. It spun off, and I think for the first 12 meetings, Kathy, how many other Progress Oshkosh members were there? None. Me. And it grew into a subcommittee of 12 to 14 that had nothing to do with it. And it took on a personality of its own, and that's why it has to have that separation. There's just no associating the two anymore. Progress Oshkosh fully supports what the CUT committee is doing, but they are absolutely separate entities. As far as the chamber getting Progress Oshkosh started, absolutely false. At no point did the chamber have anything to do other than maybe giving a mailing list to the initial Progress Oshkosh. The initial meeting was just a full shotgun postcard approach. Come to this meeting. We're going to talk about some things with city politics. We're going to maybe set up a committee or a group that can help change Oshkosh for the better. And it really grew from there. And maybe this is the topic for a future Eye on Oshkosh, because we're happy to open that discussion. But absolutely, the tie between the Oshkosh Chamber and Progress Oshkosh is completely not there, I would say, other than maybe a couple of board members who serve on both or who volunteer for both. But I think, as you know, Progress Oshkosh just dropped membership dues, and now it's literally open to anybody that has the interest and hopefully knowledge to come in and help out. But the CUT committee, this is grassroots at its finest. There is no hidden pot of money that anybody's shoving to us. There is no hidden agenda that anybody's really trying to push here. This is all about wanting better government and more efficient, accountable government, and that's really what unites us all.
Yeah, and I have to say one more thing about that.
Sure.
The recent sales tax discussion at the county board level, I heard county board supervisors tell me that they too thought this was a thinly veiled effort for the chamber to take over. But in the end, who wanted a vote against the sales tax? The chamber asked the county board to vote against the sales tax, and the county board did vote against the sales tax. So who's in bed with who?
Well, but it was a
Very
38,
interesting
a
question.
38, well, I think what the chamber needs to realize is that it was a 38-member county board that voted against it. I think when you get a 19-member county board, you're going to get that sales tax almost immediately. If a county executive has to get 19 or 20 votes out of 38, or just 9 or 10 out of 19, he's much more likely to get the 9 or 10 out of 19.
I'm going to respectfully disagree with you there, Tony. I could not disagree with that point more. And a lot of it is, we're not going to know until we play it out here. But to us, when we weigh things, of course, any action you take as a citizen, as a voter, as a business owner, as a university professor, whatever, any action you take is going to have its consequences, its pluses, its minuses. To us, the upswing of cutting this board in half, of having more accountability, of having a structure, a revamped structure from whatever it is, 14 standing committees down to a more reasonable number,
Well,
maybe 6 or 7. That's all positive.
Let me ask you this. The Oshkosh Common Council has 7 people on it. Could anyone with a straight face say that Oshkosh government is accountable and efficient? Is the 38-member county board with the executive that much worse than the 7-member county Oshkosh Common Council?
To be honest, I think it functions poorly.
I
disagree with you.
All right.
I disagree. I think the Common Council system functions much better, much more efficiently, much more cleanly than the large board. That doesn't mean that the people on the county board aren't trying hard, aren't doing their best under a cumbersome system, because I think they're trying.
But the moment you reduce, let's talk about getting elected. The moment you reduce to 19, you're doubling the size of the district, and you invariably are going to make more expensive campaigns. Currently,
minimally expensive. Right now, supervisors represent 4,200 people. That might be 1,000 houses. I don't know how many houses that is. They would represent 8,400 people under our scenario. That's about 1/7 of the city, roughly. That's not that many people. That's a few reams of paper. 5 cents at a copy house, or run it off on your own computer, and it's a lot of shoe leather going door to door. But it's doable. It's still a low budget, grassroots, knock on the door, meet the voter campaign, because you don't want to spend any money on ads when you're only running in 1/7 of a city. Ads I don't think make any sense, any economic sense in the newspaper or on the radio.
But in the last election cycle, I think
it's
every incumbent who got challenged, I believe, was defeated in the last election cycle. And that was possible because of these very small walking districts. Doubling the size is much larger.
You think every incumbent was defeated for the county board?
I think every incumbent that was challenged was defeated the last time. I know.
Well, there were only 4 challengers.
And I think they were all defeated. Doesn't that suggest that if CUT really wanted to make an impact, what you might want to do is run candidates in all the districts?
Well, that's one of the problems. There's almost a candidate on every block. Literally, the districts are too small to generate enough interest. It isn't everybody, and Cheryl knows this, you know this, Jeremy knows this, that is interested in politics, is interested in sticking your neck out, and much less doing it on the county board. And there really are a small pool of people in any case with the interest. They don't all live in that one small little area. So if you widen the geographic area a little bit, you've got more hope that these few people interested in county politics will live within that district and will be willing and eager to run. You still don't have a guarantee.
What about out in the rural areas, though, Kathy? Because
let's talk about that.
You've got the 53rd Assembly District, for example. Right now it's huge. And I know from candidates that we've interviewed in the past, they're wearing out shoes practically, trying to cover all these different little townships and so forth.
It is difficult to campaign in a rural area. There's no question about it. But there are pockets of people, pockets of houses, Omro, Winneconne, with more population, and then one might have to resort to mailings and maybe leafleting, driving, like a mailman does, driving up and down the roads. But it happens. You know,
Finding more creative ways to
yeah,
campaign.
more
apparently.
creative ways to campaign. And
Geographically-
I don't think in the towns anybody's ever spent much of any money campaigning.
Great. Geographically, you're going to have to cover a little larger area, but we're talking little.
Yes,
Larger
we are.
area. We are still, once you get out the map and you roll it out and you start looking at some of these districts, and again, we'll yield to some of the experts who would seriously, once this passes, which we're very confident it will, once this passes and goes to vote and the citizens vote on it and they start combining districts, they're going to go out of their way to keep representation consistent. And honestly, when we look at the plan that was passed by our own county board and the thing they'll be voting on at this next county board meeting to cut by 2 members, we're very concerned that these new districts will not keep the rural and urban representation consistent. In fact, they will not. There'll be quite a, what we call a deviation percentage difference. And so the citizens that spoke against this, against cutting in half, if you will, the citizens that got up and said, oh no, we definitely don't want that, I think you should try to preserve the current size, well, they cut by 2 just to circumvent that effort. And those citizens that spoke to keep the status quo, they're going to be the ones that end up getting hurt by this ultimately with non-consistent representation. And so we want to be very, very clear on this. Cutting to 19 keeps the percentage of rural and urban representation, Oshkosh, Neenah, Menasha, Omro, all of the townships, Black Wolf, Utica, it keeps them very consistent. And yeah, you're going to have to burn some rubber. Okay, put on your walking shoes. We're talking about a very good candidate. The good candidate, the one you want representing you as a voter and a citizen. They're going to be the one that's willing to slap on those tennis shoes and hit the ground running and go door to door and keep their finger on the pulse of what the citizen and the voter is thinking. Very, very important to us.
Kathy, you had mentioned, and Jeremy, you too, about better efficiency, and in one of the ways to accomplish that, you've both said, is to have less committees. What committees would you do away with, or would you roll some into other committees? How would that work? What's your plan?
I think it's difficult to cover in a program such as this to go committee by committee, but I'd simply refer you back to that 1990 study. Mm-hmm. That is literally the study we got out. I looked at it and read it quite thoroughly. I know Tony has a complete copy there. And again, I'd encourage the citizens to go get a copy of it. Look at page, I think it's 27, 23, and 24, which has the current and the proposed. It's beautiful. I mean, it doesn't take a rocket scientist. It doesn't take somebody who is intimately familiar with the workings of government to look at it and say, this seems like a more streamlined approach. It seems like that we've taken some of the things where there's overlapping jurisdiction of committees, and we've taken those things and we moved them to a committee that that would oversee that entire system.
That study calls for 6 committees: administration, public works, public health.
I don't have this is the...
There are parks.
I have the streamline.
But anyway, there are 6 logical
There it is.
headings.
Administration, health services, human services, planning and development, public safety, and public works.
Mm-hmm.
But my understanding is that this report did not necessarily grasp some of the statutory issues at the state level. There may be some committees that we actually cannot get rid of, even if we wanted to.
And
Well,
again,
this has a asterisk, mandated or referenced by statute. I think the report did look at the statutes. I think the functions must remain within a committee by statute. There's no question about that. But I can't believe that you can't have, a larger committee with statutorily mandated functions within that committee. And maybe, a subcommittee needs to meet, or the committee needs to meet doing business as the, highway committee.
Sure.
Because it's statutorily mandated, and so the Public Works Committee then, convenes as the quote highway committee for purposes of discussion of that particular item. So I'm positive, although I'm no expert, that there are ways around that.
This report also says that in its judgment, the county board should meet twice a month instead of once a month. Does CUT support that?
I think
Why not?
Yeah, we can't. We're not going to go categorically,
Right.
Tony, and say what we agree, because we're just 2 people, 2 members of a very large committee But I can say again, I'll fall back to this statement. Once we make the significant cut of the county board, and I'm talking about significant, whether it's 25, 19, whatever it ends up being, we're very disappointed, obviously, and completely opposed to a small cut. But if you went to a significant cut, you'd have no choice. You would have to say, whoa, there's way too many committees here for these few people to serve on. And they would have to do some kind of streamlining. And how are you going to do that? You're going to get the experts in county government together, and you're going to talk about, okay, what's the logical way to go? We feel this study is excellent in the way that it promotes that. Twice per month, maybe that feels right, Tony. I think I'd leave it to the political pundits to decide that.
And we have had people criticize our effort by saying, well, we don't want to support you because we don't know what the full plan is going to be. You say you want 19 supervisors, but how many committees will there be? What will this plan look like? Well, as citizens, we aren't empowered to do that. We have no role in that. Our only role in state law is to circulate the petition to reduce the size, and we have ideas, and we'd be happy to, I'd be happy to sit down in 10 minutes and say, well, here's what I think the county board ought to look like, but it's not my role. Right. It's in the end, it will be the county board that has to make that decision.
Right, but then Kathy, wouldn't it have not made sense then to say, let's let that Albrecht committee keep meeting for a while, to just so that we all know what are the real world consequences of being at 19. What's it going to cost? How many committees will there be, and so on. It seems like you folks are saying, and correct me if I'm wrong, cut first and ask all those questions later. Shouldn't we ask those questions in advance? Shouldn't we have a good idea in advance what 19 is going to mean?
In my opinion, we don't need it, Tony. And I'll back that up with a clear, concise statement. There has been a lot of money and a lot of time spent prior to 2006 in studying what a smaller county board might look like, what the advantages might be, why we ought to do it. And those studies were the basis for the Cut Committee when we started going through this odyssey and considering this petition. In my opinion, those are the answers to the questions you seek. They're there. They've been there. What, in my opinion, what would a temporary committee discover exactly? What is there left to discover that has not already been studied? I'm very interested in an answer to that question.
Well, it's hard to discover things when members of the committee already have their mind made up. Like my understanding is on that committee were people who already believe the board size should be cut. Well, how then can that committee do an objective study?
Well, let me point out that there are, I think, 8 members on that committee, 5 county board members and 3 citizens. The 5 county board members, in my estimate, several of them did speak at those meetings, and many, if not all, had no desire to cut the size of the county board. That was evident in the first few meetings. 3 citizens, yes, I admit to being interested in cutting. Mm-hmm. 2 other citizens I wouldn't want to characterize, right, that they're adamant for cutting or adamant for not cutting. They're trying to keep their minds open, minds more open. So we did have diversity of opinion, but we also weren't going anywhere, and we weren't going anywhere fast.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. All right, Cheryl.
Well, it just seems to me like with so many governmental bodies, you study things over a course of years, and nothing ever gets done. And I think that's true of something as large as a 38-member county board size, or, a 7-member school board. Mm-hmm. I don't know what the answer is, but as far as the lawsuit goes, without getting into the specifics of that, I mean, we've had one judge recuse himself. Then it was assigned to Judge Carver. Now the county's asking for a new judge. This could conceivably get dragged out. I think right now it's scheduled for a hearing sometime in January, isn't it? Mm-hmm.
January 16th, I believe. Again, that's available on the county's website.
Right, and there we're starting to get very close to when ballots have to start getting drawn up.
We're concerned that there are not additional stall tactics.
Well, that was where I was going with this, Kathy. Is
what we're going to answer
the
too.
legal system, by its very nature, drags out rather slowly. So what what will CUT do if this gets dragged out?
Well,
what can you do?
We shall see.
We'll just have to see.
We have to play a wait and see. Like I said, these are, in my opinion, and if I gain nothing else out of this, again, I can put my personal hat on. If I gain nothing else out of this CUT committee odyssey and in learning about this, I gained a lot of friends. And these are people that I respect, and you can tell when you hear Kathy speak about this, she's very passionate and extremely knowledgeable and will be a lifelong friend. I mean, to me, that's what's cool about living in a community like Oshkosh and a county like Winnebago. You can connect with people like that on a very personal level. But yeah, we're obviously very disappointed about where this has gone. And I just reiterate, we did not want to use the legal aspect. We didn't want to spend the money. We don't have any money. It's a volunteer committee made up of people who are just passionate about seeing better, more efficient government. And now, unfortunately, we just didn't want to see all of our efforts go. In that vein, I would like to make a shameless plug for our website, if I may.
Sure.
It's very simple. It's CUT Winnebago. That's CUT Winnebago, all one word, .com. For now, all you're going to see are the frequently asked questions I have printed out in front of me here. Frequently asked questions and answers. And we've heard a lot of these asked, for example, the rural versus urban representation question that was asked earlier, why 19 is the magic number. But there's a lot more information that we'll be adding there. Some of the different articles that have played out in the newspapers statewide.
Let me just say for the record, I did sign the petition, but I've not been convinced yet that reducing the size to 19 is the way to go. But let me come back to something that you said earlier. You said the county government has not been as good for the airport as you'd like. The county does have an aviation committee. Has that aviation committee not done good things?
I think you put words in my mouth by saying that it didn't do the things that we wanted to do. Obviously, in making my business livelihood at the airport, it's very critical that the airport be healthy. What I could say is that there's a lot of things that we could do in getting our communication to a much greater level. There's a lot of confusion. For example, when a business approaches the airport and calls the airport, this is a whole nother show, by the way, but when a business calls the airport, they get the airport office. They don't really have the authority in the airport office to begin what you would consider to be a legitimate negotiation. Okay, you want to put a factory here? Here's where you put it. Here's how much money it's going to cost you, all that. They have to actually work through this bureaucracy of the county board, 38 supervisors. And they have to usually put these negotiations on hold until the next county board meeting. I'm just using a specific example. It's not any individual supervisor. It's not the fault of the aviation committee. It's not the fault of the airport manager. I think they all do very good jobs. The bottom line is we can't act quickly to land some of these prospects. And I think we see that countywide. This is not just isolated to the airport. But, let's talk about modern day business. It moves, man. I mean, if you want to land that good prospect, you have to be ready to move. You have to be ready to negotiate. You have to be ready to write a lease. Some of those things. That's just one example, Tony, about the airport.
But government, representative government, if I remember my civics textbooks correctly, is supposed to slow things down.
Correct.
Because business is fantastic. We all love business.
Yep.
But given their druthers, they'll develop anywhere quickly without considering a whole bunch of factors.
It's very true.
So,
well, let's talk about the parallels between, again, we're talking about a third show, the parallels between the airport and its development opportunities, and let's talk about the waterfront and the river running through Oshkosh. We have tremendous opportunities here in this community for economic development, and I think that's one of Progress Oshkosh's other tasks to kind of oversee, to kind of help, is a better term, to help. That's all we're there for. We're here. You need our help, call. We're bankers, we're lawyers, we're other business people. We're here to help you. And yes, I agree, Tony. There's no reason to rush into anything. But I was just pointing out one way, let's say Appleton, Outagamie, or another county who acts a little more efficiently than Winnebago does, is competing for the same prospect.
But Outagamie's got a 38-member board, don't they? Or 36?
Yeah, well,
36.
Maybe I picked the wrong county. Let's talk about Las Vegas or California or Arizona.
Let's get back to the topic.
Yeah. Thank you, Kathy. See, this is why I like
if you don't mind.
much.
The Albrecht Temporary Committee is going to begin meeting again. I got a notice. They'll be meeting next Wednesday. And so I intend to participate. And I intend to, hopefully, we will all sit down around the table, perhaps something like Syria and the U.S. and,
What's the purpose
and
at
Iraq.
this point?
Well, I have to find out. I didn't call the meeting. I didn't call the meeting. But I think there are still things the committee can do. The committee can put down their swords and start talking about future committee organization, start talking about some of these issues that we've raised as citizens, and I think positive things can still come out of it if
Agreed.
people are willing to do it.
I
And
agree.
I certainly am.
And I
you know,
cons-
as I said, put the swords behind us and let's not talk about the present, let's talk about the future.
Sorry for stepping on you, Kathy.
And that's Wednesday, the 13th of
Right.
December. So by the time this show airs, that meeting will already have been held, unfortunately.
Well, but hopefully the committee will continue to meet once we...
Right.
Sure.
Right. And
Start
those
again.
meetings are open to the public?
Oh, yes.
Okay.
They are noticed on the county website
Okay.
Great.
And where are they usually held?
all over.
Different places?
This one, I think, is in the Oren King building in a conference room.
Okay.
And regardless of the outcome here, I mean, we're going to have a lot of different paths here. There are a lot of different potential outcomes right now. And I think what I can say without question is that we've assembled a group, the CUT Committee, the current CUT Committee, and the future CUT Committee, that is just very interested in staying involved. I mean, we're interested in giving our input, we're interested in helping out, and I think it would be a shame if the county board didn't also reach out to the CUT Committee just as the CUT Committee has reached out to them.
How many members is the CUT committee right now?
Well, a steering committee of approximately 12. I would say the main people that you're going to see visit, and the larger committee probably closer to 75 or 80 as far as the number of people that sign signatures. That's probably a good estimate, I
Right.
would say. But yeah, the main people that you're going to see on programs like this and in the press are myself and Kathy in front of you, Dennis Rumlow, who's a citizen who's been helping out a tremendous amount, Susie and John Vetti, who've been very active and involved, and Margie Davey, who's sort of the campaign chairperson. And then also Supervisor Tom Peck. He's a next supervisor, county supervisor, but we used a lot of information from him. But in any event, it's a committee, Jan Scalpone from the League of Women Voters, some of the Northside League. It's a very wide-ranging group and a good cross-section of what makes up this county.
And not necessarily members, all members of the Chamber of Commerce either.
I don't think
as-
any of
as
those
you
I
guys said
named
earlier.
are.
Few or
Perhaps
none
the Vettys and
are
myself are
members.
probably it. Yep.
Right.
Okay. All right, very good. Well, our time is up, and you were right. Before the show, you said we could probably do a few shows on this, and you're right. And you've given me ideas for future shows, so thank you. But thanks to both of you, Jeremy and Kathy, for being here and discussing this. This is an important issue, no matter where you stand.
CutWinnebago.com. Another shameless plug, but thank you, Cheryl and Tony. It's our pleasure being on.
Yes.
All right, thanks very much. And Tony, thank you. And as always, thanks to all of you at home for letting us in your homes for the last hour. We'll see you next time. Until then, take good care. Keep your eye on us. We've got our eye on Oshkosh.